In this lesson, we're going to take a look at the two new effects we have access to, the Vibrance Color Corrector effect and the Black and White Color Corrector effect. So I've just opened up the bicycle alley footage and imported it into a composition. And this is just a good comp for us to look at these two new effects that we have access to. So let's select our layer and we can access these through our effect color correction. And we can see here is black and white and vibrance. Let's just drop on the vibrance to begin with. Now if you know the Photoshop vibrance, this works exactly the same. And it's just a very handy way of increasing the colors of our image or of our footage without overblowing them. So let's first take a look at saturation. What saturation does is it pushes the color channels apart from each other. So the colors become more and more saturated, or they become stronger in that color. This red here has been pushed more on the red scale, and the blue has been removed from it. Now the problem with saturation is we can get these overblown or completely far too saturated colors that just look not good. And so what vibrance does is it tries to do a similar thing to the saturation in that it makes the color stronger, but it does it without blowing out the values or without clamping any of our information. So it's a much safer way of bringing back those colors and enhancing these colors without creating those overblown areas or without removing the luminance value of our objects. So we can see if we turn this on and off that by adding this vibrance filter or this vibrance effect, we're able to push these colors to be brighter and more vivid quite easily. So again, it's just another effect that we can use with our saturation, and it allows us to control the strength of the colors proportional with the other colors. Alright, so next we have the black and white effect, so let's add this in here. So I'm just going to dial back my vibrance, and we can again find this under Effect Color Correction, Black and White. Now you might be asking, why do we need a black and white effect? Can't we just add on a hue saturation and turn the saturation down to 0? And that is completely true. We can do this, and we will get a black and white image. However, we have little to no control over how our black and white image is calculated. All we're doing is saying remove all the color values and essentially just leave us with luminance. But there are many times when we actually want to come in and separate the colors or set the colors specifically. So I'm just going to take a snapshot of a saturation-based black and white, and now let's turn on our black and white effect. And by default, if we switch our snapshots, it doesn't really look like much of a difference. But now we have all of these controls. So let's just turn this off for a second. So let's say we want our blues to be dark and our reds to be brighter. With a hue saturation, we have no control. But with our black and white effect, we can come in here, increase the reds, and we can go down and decrease the blues. And so you can see we have an incredible amount of control over what colors will be mapped or assigned to which black and white values. So as you can see here, when we have a photograph or a video with a lot of different coloration, using this black and white effect allows us to completely come in and dial in the specifics of these colors. Now you'll notice we have a -200 to 300 range, and of course we want to be very careful with the extremes. I would probably keep this in between, I'd say about -20 and probably about 120. If we push this too far, you can see we begin to get some artifacting in some of these areas. So it's an incredibly powerful effect for creating the black and white image while still having control over the values and how much each of the colors affects that value. Now finally at the bottom we have the ability to tint this. By default it's set at this nice color. Of course we can come in and tint this whatever color we want. By default it's giving us this nice sepia tone, but of course we can come in and modify this. Okay, great. So this was just a quick look at these two new effects that we have access to. The Vibrance Effect, which allows us to create a less damaging or less value-destroying saturation or desaturation, and the Black and White, which allows us a high level of control over creating black and white images here inside of After Effects.